Right. So the next story is a bit of a sensitive one. So this is Grok AI that has been accused of basically creating pictures where they undress people. So you could upload a picture of someone and undress them. Now, it seems like a bit of a straightforward thing to me of like, well, you can't do that. But I guess my wondering about this is what role does government and legislation play in all of this? Because I think that we've definitely seen with the EU and definitely seen with the government in this country is sort of they don't really know how to deal with tech. They're kind of thinking, well, we'll just ban it. Ban it, which people say, well, free speech and freedom to do these. You can't just ban everything that has an issue, and we certainly don't do that with non-tech things. We don't just ban things, but with this, it's interesting, and I'm interesting for opinions on it. Of like, well, where is the line? Because I think we can all agree, no one should be making naked pictures of people, right? However, I remember, sort of like school days, and there would be, sort of online things where they would take a naked body of a woman and they would slap a celebrity's face on it, a really bad Photoshop job. There would be those kind of things. We've also had, I remember there was the Piers Morgan controversy where it was a cartoonist and they depicted him sort of performing a sex act on Donald Trump. So my question is really, do we need to legislate more around you are not allowed to take someone's likeness and depict them in a sexual way? Or is it just, no, the issue is that AI is so good you cannot distinguish fact from fiction, a cartoon and a bad Photoshop. We understand that, that's just, that's fake. Whereas the AI, it's more, well, is this a naked picture of this person? I don't know. And obviously distinguishing between that happening to a celebrity, which obviously is bad, and that happening to a young girl at school where the boys have just put it into Grok AI and now they've got this image of her and that's very invasive. So where do you think it is just the government need to, but I think now Grok has basically said like, we'll stop doing it, which I think is probably maybe where it is the right thing to do in the sense of the company has created something, it's being misused, it's the company's responsibility. But I don't know the role legislation plays in this. What are your thoughts?
I happen to agree with you. This is a really difficult one because the fundamental thing is the government doesn't understand AI. It thinks it's just a giant search engine. It doesn't grasp what it is. I was at Bletchley Park when we had the big tech summit when Elon Musk was invited to speak and all the rest of it. Most of the people there were saying, you've got to stop us, because we're just going to keep plowing ahead with developing and developing and developing. And it's one of those things that, once these people get going, stopping them is going to be very difficult because they're not going to do it themselves. They were actually asking for the hard limits as to how far they could go. We did it in the scientific world where we said, you can't experiment on this. These are the limits to what you could do. I think we have to have that approach into the tech system as a kind of the ethics of what we're doing. We always plow ahead and then we suddenly think, we should have thought about the ethics. At what point do we learn we should really do it the other way round? But I think I like the fact that it is actually X that have decided to do this, because I don't like giving the government the power just to ban things, because it sets a very dangerous precedent. And, we've got a government at the moment where most people would say, well, there's a lot of things being banned. There's a lot of things being censored. Why? And it always seems to be to protect people from harm. What do you mean by harm? It's a very loose term. It's what I call the tyranny of the vague. We all say the same word, but we all mean different things. And it's going to be interesting to see if the government actually has the capability to control a tech company. Because let's not forget, these are international, global things. So I know Canada and Australia, I think New Zealand were kind of in on the game to kind of control X, but they'd rather failed. Because Donald Trump said, you go after an American company, we'll go after you. So it'll be interesting when Trump leaves office, will this signal a shift if it's not a Republican? It's like a lot of this is, like I said, we're writing the rules. This is the new industrial revolution. A lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people are misusing it. But at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's not the thing that's doing the deed. It's the person that is doing the making of the image. So we didn't really ban cameras when they were used to take disgusting photos. So this is, you have to remember that, there's a person doing the typing. There's a person putting the thing into the AI. That's what we need to go after. And the National Crime Agency have been on about this for a long time. They've been desperate to beef up their kind of online, the paedophile hunters and all that kind of stuff. They don't have the resources. So if we don't give the people the resources, stuff like this happens. But I have to admit, it mustn't be pleasant. And I think it must be awful if you're at school and this happens to you. I could only imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
that goes into sort of child abuse images. But from my perspective on this, I think we can all agree this is bad. This shouldn't be happening. But for me, it is just about what is the right tool. And then thinking ahead of that tool. If you
Yeah.
say, okay, if you create a naked image of someone, I think number one, so that, are we then going to get 14-year-old boys that have created a picture of Keir Starmer in a bikini?
Mm.
Are we going to arrest these kids? Whereas actually,
Yeah.
you would say, well, if they've then made a picture of someone they're going to school with in a bikini, well, then you would say, well, yeah, they can't do that because I guess we have revenge porn laws in this country too. And then you would say, okay, so say if you're going to arrest someone because they've used Grok to make a picture of Keir Starmer in a bikini, right? But then what if they draw it? What if they make it as a cartoon, as I said before? Because
That's a good point.
we've had a lot of cartoons depicting Donald Trump with a small penis, for example. So is there a line
Mm.
between depicting Donald Trump with a small penis in a cartoon and then depicting him with a small penis in a Grok AI image that looks realistic? Are we then going to arrest the person that did that? And so for me, it's about, okay, what tool and what feels reasonable, which is why I say, it would just be better if Grok would just stop this. So then we don't have to
Yeah.
worry too much about the legislation. Not that I don't think there should be legislation to stop, especially if you're depicting people underage. I mean, there's just no excuse. But
Mm.
yeah, there's no excuse for all of it, obviously. But
That's
I
a
don't
really
know. For
interesting
me, it's
point, guys, to
just,
say.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I was just going to say, just really quickly, that's a really interesting point about if they draw it and the fact we've had cartoons on certain things. I think the thing we have to get into is why do people not realize something's fake? I think that's the big
Mm,
thing. What can we do more to identify uh, AI generated images to make sure that no matter what you put it on, it's automatically tagged as an AI image? Maybe that's something that the
mm,
platforms could work together on. As instead of saying we're not going to stop you, we want you to, we want to work together and try to find a way. Because I do think the people's automatic reactions that some of this stuff is real, I think, is a bigger problem. Particularly when we look at things like fake news and all this kind of stuff, is why do people think that stuff is real? And I think identifying the fake is a better way of doing it than just stopping it. Because even if they ban it on X, that technology exists. That way of doing it is still out there now. Is whether you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So at some point, we're going to have to kind of deal with the fact that when you invent something, you can't just ban it. It doesn't go away. Once you've written a book, the book exists. You can burn as many copies as you like. People have still read it, and
yeah.
I think they have this wrong. And that's a really interesting point. I've yet to hear anybody make this point about if somebody draws an image or so, rather than it be AI created, because everyone's just focused on the tech aspect of it. They've not actually focused on the act itself, and that's
Mm.
that's
Well, that's why I
well,
think it's an
I like that
interesting
point.
moral. It's an interesting one because I think there is such AI fear, and anything to do with AI is like, oh my god, it's like, but hold on, before
Mm,
AI, this wasn't something people moved to ban and stop, like the Photoshop and the cartoon stuff. So whilst we can all agree this, you can't be doing this, it's just what tools you use and where is the line, I think for me is what we need to discuss. But I also think what you've done is just zoomed out of this and said, well, it's not even just about this one issue of naked photos. What
mm,
about when we use that video to, we create a video of Nigel Farage using the N word the day before an election, and there isn't time to verify
yeah,
if this is real or not. So I think that what you're saying is
that
we
will
do need
happen.
a
By the
way
way,
to better tell, right?
that kind of stuff is going to happen. I mean, it's already happening now. I think Downing Street lost its mind a couple of weeks ago when there was a video out of Keir Starmer, saying he was going to bring in the kind of Chinese monitoring system. People automatically jumped on it that it was real, and
Mm,
like you said, what's the old quote? A lie is halfway around the world, while the truth is still getting its trousers on. And I think this is the problem: is that the government is reacting; it's not leading on it because it's trying to control something it can't control in the old-fashioned way. So I do think
yeah.
working with the platforms to identify things easier is the way to do this, rather than trying to ban something that, like you said, the genie's out of the bottle.
Mm. Right. Well, I'm sure this is a story that's going to run for a while until we find the right way to deal with it. So let's move on to the next story.
Subscribe for more content.